All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of D&D Deep Dive, the show where we dive deep into classes, subclasses, and other features of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons to help you get the most out of your choices. So, today, due to the fact that my last series on rogues was inspired by the fact that I hadn't done any of the Sword Coast Adventures Giga Guide rogue options, I figured I would go back to the Sword Coast Adventures Guide and just cover a few of the other subclasses in there that I just haven't covered. And we're actually going to start with the Barbarian Path of the Battlerager, which, unlike the rogue options, actually only show up in the Sword Coast Adventures Guide. They aren't reprinted in any of the future books as far as I'm aware of. So this is one that you absolutely have to have the Sword Coast Adventures Guide in order to be able to utilize it. So the Path of the Battlerager itself is a bit interesting, to say the least. The basics of the Path of the Battlerager are it's an armor based subclass for the Barbarian, which is normally an unarmored warrior. So that in and of itself is a little bit weird. They actually create a special kind of armor literally for the Battlerager itself, which is something that they haven't done since then. They've not introduced a subclass or a class where they have to introduce a brand new kind of weapon or armor or anything like that for the class to exist. And as we go through the Battlerager, you will probably figure out why. Mostly because as far as classes that I have seen played at conventions, at my own tables, at the charity events that I've helped run, I don't think I've ever seen a Battlerager played. So let's actually dive into it. First things first, just like every other one of these videos, we are going to do some very basic refresher on 5th edition class design, which is every single class should play very differently, and they should play that way right from the beginning. So each class in 5th edition will have these things called defining features. These are the things that make the class play differently. And in order to be considered defining features, we need to have them show up within the first 2 levels. Excuse me. So, what are the defining features for the Barbarian? Probably the most obvious, because this is not only is this an exclusive Barbarian thing, but this has been an exclusive Barbarian thing since its inception in, I think the Barbarian itself was a kit in 2nd edition that eventually turned into a full class by the 3rd edition. But that is the Rage feature. Rage, effectively, you can use your bonus action to rage. It lasts for a set amount of time, generally a minute. And while you're raging, you will have resistance against bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. Basically, most physical damage you are resisted against. You have advantage on strength saves, and you do extra damage on strength-based melee attacks. And just that really kind of defines what the Barbarian is designed to do. A Barbarian is designed to do a lot of damage and take a lot of damage. It has the largest damage die in the game. They get a D12 for their hit points. And they're designed to be able to just take tons and tons of punishment and dish it out at the same time. Because of that, a lot of people think barbarians are single attribute dependent classes, but they're not. They're actually multiple attribute dependent classes, because they need both strength for their attack rolls and damage rolls and everything, and constitution for the additional hit points it gets, and a few other class abilities and some subclass abilities will use your constitution. And that fits into that idea of them doing a lot of damage into the taking a lot of damage. Other defining features, they get unarmored defense, which is kind of similar to the monk's unarmored defense, but in this case, they can add their constitution modifier to their AC instead of their wisdom modifier, in addition to their dexterity modifier. So dexterity is still useful for a barbarian, but constitution is just as useful, if not more so. The other defining feature of the barbarian that they get at second level is reckless attack. Basically, they can use reckless attack to basically give all of their attacks that to turn advantage for the cost of all attacks until the start of their next turn against them being made with advantage, which again feeds into that idea of they're designed to give a lot of damage and they're designed to take a lot of damage. Because of a reckless attack, they increase the amount of damage they do, and they become much more attractive targets to the enemy. Not only because they're doing lots of damage, but also because they're easier to hit. So that's kind of the basics of it. One other thing that they get is at second level is called Danger Sense. Basically, they have advantage on dex saves against effects that they can see, which kind of makes up for the fact that most barbarians don't have resistance to basically any kind of magic damage, because a lot of magic spells require you to make the dexterity saves. They're going to have a little bit easier to the time making those dex saves, which again means that they're going to have that much more survivability. So let's dive into the path of the Battlerager. So first things first, when you pick this at the third level, the first thing you see is restriction dwarves only. To my knowledge, there are only 2 subclasses in the entire game that are restricted to a race. One of those subclasses, the Bladesinger, they've taken that restriction away, I believe, in Xanath, or not Xanathar's, in Tasha's. I'm going to look it up right now because I'm 100% feeling like I'm forgetting something. Yeah, in Tasha's Culture of Everything, there is no limitation for the only being elves or Ladrin that can be Bladesingers. Excuse me, sorry about that. So, what that means is the Path of the Battlerager currently is the only limited subclass in the entire game. I myself am not particularly fond of subclasses or classes that are limited by race in 5th edition, just because it severely limits your ability to create interesting characters. If all Battle Ragers have to be dwarves, then not only are you limiting the race, but you're also generally going to be limiting the sub-race, because you're going to pick the sub-race that's going to give you the bonuses that you need for the Battle Rager. So you really are significantly limiting anyone that wants to play a Battle Rager Barbarian. So I'm not a huge fan of that. The other thing that you get at the third level is called Battlerager Armor. you gain the ability to use spiked armor, which they actually have a sidebar that explains what spiked armor is. Spiked armor is a new type of armor. It is medium armor. They give a little description of it. It consists of a leather coat and leggings covered with spikes that are usually made of metal. It costs 75 gold. The AC is 14 plus your dex mod, which is a maximum of 2 that you can add to it. So maximum with spiked armor, you can have a total armor class of 16 before adding magic bonuses into the things like that. And as with some medium armor, any stealth checks you made are made with a disadvantage. So, again, relatively simple armor. You can wear it as a Battlerager, and it is a defining feature of this as a subclass. Everything around the subclass is built around this very special armor. Now, that does mean the unarmored defense, one of those defining features of the Barbarian, is useless because while you're wearing armor, you cannot use unarmored defense. So now they've just decreased the usefulness of the Constitution modifier. Constitution still super useful for a Barbarian, just for the extra hit points, but now they're not getting a bonus to their AC. So it's a little interesting. And then the spiked armor, when it's worn by a Battlerager Barbarian, you can do more things with it. While you're wearing spiked armor and are raging, so this does require you to be in your rage, you can use a bonus action to make one melee weapon attack with your armor spikes against a target within 5 feet of you. If the attack hits, the spike deals 1d4 piercing damage. Use your strength modifier for the attack and damage rolls. And additionally, when you use the attack action to grapple a creature, the target takes 3 piercing damage if your grapple check succeeds. So there's a lot built in there. First of all, you have this unique armor that only you can use. Second of all, when you're raging, you have a new use for your bonus action. Kind of similar to the frenzy rage for the Berserker Barbarian. You can use your bonus action to make an attack. Now, a d4 of damage is really low, especially compared to the frenzied rage bonus action attack, which is just another attack you get to make with your main hand weapon, which for most barbarians is a great axe, because that d12 damage die works really well with their expanded criticals ability they get later on in the class. So with this, d4 isn't great. You're not going to be doing most of your damage with the d4. You're going to be getting most of your damage from that with your strength modifier and your additional rage damage. Because this is a strength-based melee attack, you get the additional damage from rage. It starts out at an extra 2 points per hit effectively, and eventually we'll get up to an extra 4 points. So if you have max rage or max strength and you are raging, every one of these spike attacks is going to do 9 damage plus a d4, which is much more useful than just a single d4 of damage sounds. Once you get to really high levels, if you get a level to 20 Barbarian, your strength and your constitution score increase by 4, and your maximums increase by 4. So theoretically, a level 20 Battlerager Barbarian could be doing 11 plus 1d4 piercing damage with their bonus action. So as much as it does seem really limited, it's not quite as limited as it could be. The grapple action they to talk about here. Grappling is something that not a whole lot of people do a whole lot. And the Battlerager armor is trying to give you an incentive to do it even more. Personally, I think grappling can be a really, really effective way to add a little bit of control to an encounter. And because the Battlerager does give you a slight incentive to grapple creatures, the Battlerager itself can actually benefit from things like the Grappler feat, where, if I remember correctly, my memory is just so bad right now, but I believe, there we go. Yeah, you have advantage on attack rolls against a creature you are grappling. So a Battlerager with the Grappler feat could be really, really effective, simply because they wouldn't have to use their reckless attack to get their advantage that the class is really well known for. And again, as you get to higher levels, you start getting expanded criticals. The ability to get those extra critical hits is really useful. However, you need a free hand to use a grapple. So instead of using something like a Great Axe for the D12 damage die, you would need to use something like a long sword, or something akin to that, where you're only getting a D8 of damage because you need to grapple something. So everything that the Battlerager gives you has a pretty big caveat, which is less than I did a deal. And the 3 extra piercing damage I don't really see as being a good replacement for your D12 damage die that you would normally have. So, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting idea. It just doesn't seem very well thought out. I would much rather see maybe 6 piercing damage instead of the 3, and maybe a D6 on the damage die of the Battlerager instead of a D4. That would at least make it a little bit more of a choice between playing the Battlerager the way it's designed to be played, which is by using the armor to attack and all that cool stuff, and playing the Battlerager the way it's going to give you the best bang for your buck as a Barbarian, which is using a Great Axe, and never grappling anyone. Does that make sense? So that is the 3rd level. At 6th level, you get Reckless Abandon. Beginning at 6th level, when you use Reckless Attack while raging, you also gain temporary hit points equal to your Constitution modifier, minimum of 1, and they vanish if any of them are left when your rage ends. So now you're getting kind of conflicting to the things. They want you grappling, which, again, from a control aspect is pretty useful, but you have to trade one of your really powerful attacks every time you grapple just to stop the person from running away. And a Great Axe opportunity attack is almost as useful a method of keeping an enemy from running away as a grapple attack. So I mentioned before the grappler would be nice because now you don't have to use your reckless attack. Well, at 6th level, they want you using your reckless attack. So now the idea of using the grappler makes even less sense, because this effectively tells you really want to be using your reckless attack every turn, because it gives you a little blanket of temporary hit points. And again, because while you're raging, you have resistance to basically any physical damage, you can effectively double those temporary hit points because you're still taking half damage on the temporary hit points. That's really useful. That turns this into even more of a kind of reckless abandon. I'm going to dive into my enemies as much as possible kind of barbarian. I actually think that's kind of cool. I don't think it fits with the additional effect of grappling from the Battlerager. I understand why they would put that in, because it makes sense that if you grab someone with spiky armor, they would take a little bit of the damage when you do that. But as far as mechanics and how this is designed to be used, those seem to conflict, because now there just really isn't a benefit to grappling, even if you have the grappler feat. It's just not something that's useful. If you're going to be reckless attacking anyway. And again, now you actually can go back to using your great axe. So yeah, it's weird. Going to 10th level, you get Battlerager Charge. Beginning at 10th level, you can take the dash action as a bonus action while you're raging. So the Barbarian is one of the hypermobility classes, along with the Monk and the Rogue, for different reasons. The Monk is hypermobile because they actually have a higher base speed than almost any other class. Their base speed gets bigger and bigger, and they get that relatively early on. I believe it's a defining feature of the Monk. They get it in the, I believe it's in the second level. Barbarians also get additional speed, just like the Monk. They just don't get it until 5th level. So I don't consider it a defining feature, simply because it shows up too late in the class. But it is something that higher level barbarians are kind of built, and the reason why is it's meant to be a way to accent your rage. Because the additional damage for rage only applies on strength-based melee attacks, the barbarian needs to be able to get within melee distance any time that they attack. So the additional speed is meant to make that easier. With Battlerager Charge, you now have even more reason to or even more ways to be hypermobile, to the point where monks can normally outspeed a barbarian, because they can use their bonus action to Step of the Wind, which allows them to dash. So they theoretically could be faster than barbarians and rogues because of their additional speed. The Battlerager charge ability basically puts a barbarian on the same level as a monk as far as speed is concerned, and technically slightly better, because they don't have to burn a limited resource in order to do their dash. So the Battlerager is hyper mobile. Very, 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 very fast. Can get to basically anywhere you want on the battlefield. Now, the first thought when you hear this is, oh, well, then that could be kind of cool if you use the dash or the charger feat. Yeah, that would be in my reading too. Basically, the charger, when you use your action to dash, you can use a bonus action to make one melee attack, a weapon attack, or to shove a creature. That doesn't work because you're using your bonus action to dash. Damn it. Well, the other aspect of charger could actually be useful. If you move at least 10 feet in a straight line immediately before taking this bonus action, oh wait, it's still a bonus action. So no, something that sounds like it could be super, super useful, the charger feat doesn't work with the Battlerager at all. So yeah, the hypermobility is nice, but barbarians are already pretty hypermobile, and while this makes them crazy fast, it means that they have to give up their Battlerager armor attack to do it. So again, kind of conflicting with the Battlerager, where it's like, well, here now you can use your bonus action to actually do damage, which is a defining feature of the Barbarian. It's just doing lots of damage, and then they go, well, at 10th level, we'll let you run even faster. Most combats, the additional speed from fast movement is going to be more than enough for the Barbarian. Like they really don't need another dash to be able to get anywhere. So Battlerager Charger, while I could see in some instances it being extremely useful, in most instances you're not going to use it because it's much more valuable to do extra damage as a Barbarian. So, yeah. Finally, at 14th level, you get Spiked Retribution. When a creature within 5 feet of you hits you with a melee attack, the attacker takes 3 piercing damage if you are raging, aren't incapacitated, and are wearing spiked armor. This is actually pretty damn useful for a number of reasons. First things first, because of Reckless Abandon, you have already, by the time you hit 14th level, you've already gotten used to the idea that you are using Reckless attack every single turn to basically top up your temporary hit points, which makes you significantly more attractive as a target to the bad guys. You're a lot easier to hit. Now, with Spiked Retribution, any melee attacker that's going to be taking swings at you is going to be taking 3 piercing damage every time they hit you with an attack. Now, the way that they balance damage with higher challenge rating monsters in 5th edition is they add additional attacks. It has to do with the action economy. Whichever side has more specific things they do, actions, that they can do on a turn, that side has the advantage. So with higher level monsters, one of the ways they did to do that is they make their single attack action turn into multiple attacks. And it's a great way to balance it. What that means is when your Barbarian is getting attacked by everything, the attackers aren't taking that 3 piercing damage once. The attackers are taking that 3 piercing damage every single to the time they hit you with a melee attack, which by 14th level, you're getting creatures that have 3 and 4 attacks per turn. So that goes from 3 damage to 12 damage that they take on their turn, which is super, super useful. Spiked Retribution is probably the most useful ability that the Battlerager has. I would almost like to see it show up earlier. Like, give the Battlerager charge at 14th level. It's still a lame ability, but by the time you get to 14th level, you're dealing with more unique battle situations and the things like that you aren't dealing with at lower levels. And anything that gives you that additional damage for every melee attack against you, I think is good. It really justifies the Battlerager armor, the fact that you have a lower armor class, but because you can't use your Constitution modifier to improve your armor, which again at level 20 is a big difference. Any other time, you're only generally going to be losing maybe 1 or 2 points of ACC, which isn't massive, but it's enough. But once you get to level to 20, that's an additional 4 AC you don't get. And that is a big deal. Yeah, like, again, I'm not particularly fond of the fact that it's only 3 piercing damage at 14th level. 3 damage is next to nothing for most monsters at that level. It's nice that it's every single attack, but I'd much rather see it, even just increasing it to 5 would make it significantly more useful for the Barbarian. But yeah, so final thoughts. overall, the Battlerager fights itself. The dwarves only thing is problematic. I understand the lore reasons behind it, but it's just not that great. And the other benefits of the Battlerager class don't really justify the extreme limitations. With the Blade Singer, the amount of really awesome stuff you could do as a Blade Singer, even the original version before Tasha's, where it still wasn't a enormously amazing class, it was still really cool, and it was worth having to be an elf to play the class. So yeah, I'm not fond of the dwarves only, especially since putting spikes on armor is not something that is a strange thing. Like, spikes on armor are something that existed in the real world. They weren't super common, but it was something that we've seen on actual historical armor. Not like all over, but little spikes into the things like that, I think. I'm talking out of my ass here. I actually don't know. I can see it in my head, pictures of actual armor with spikes on it. So someone that actually knows about armor, Gil, if you're watching this, say something in the comments below. But yeah, it just doesn't seem like only dwarves could ever figure out how to put a spike on armor. It seems really weird. The Battlerager armor ability, it's just underpowered. It doesn't really justify the loss of armor class. And the grappling benefits you get here are just almost useless. Because they conflict with how the Barbarian is written in general. The bonus action attack, having an attack, something you can always use your bonus action for, is always useful. I'd much rather see it a D6 than it did a D4, but a D4 is better than nothing, and most of your damage is going to be coming from your strength mod and your rage damage. So it's not that big a deal, but it could be better. Reckless Abandon is a really interesting attack. It highly incentivizes you to basically constantly be using Reckless attack, because the temporary hit points really do offset the disadvantage of having all the attacks against you have an advantage. Battlerager Charger is next to useless, especially at the 10th level. You already are faster than most classes. You don't need Battlerager Charger to be able to get to your enemies for the most part. Unless you're fighting exclusively monks that are kiting you around, specifically ranged monks, you're never going to use Battlerager Charger. Spiked Retribution, on the other hand, is awesome. I would have loved to see it show up earlier and have a much cooler thing that happens at the 14th level. But for your ultimate subclass of ability, it's not bad. It's definitely the best ability of the Battlerager. However, that's not comparing it to too much. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm not particularly fond of the Battlerager. I would want to make some modifications to it just to make it a little bit more fun of a class. Probably get rid of Battlerager Charge and the grapple aspect from Battlerager Armor and increase the damage on the bonus action attack, and find something, or put Spiked Retribution at to the 10, and then find something really cool for 14, and this could be a really awesome, fun class to play, and wouldn't feel significantly weaker than the rest of the Barbarian paths. So anyway, that is going to be all for me today. As always, if you enjoyed this, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, so all these go directly to your subscribe box. Hit the bell icon, turn notifications on, so you never miss when I release a new video. I do put out 4 videos a week. In the comments below, I really want to know from you guys, Do you see a build for this that I am missing? Using feats, you're using maybe the alternate abilities or the optional abilities in Tasha's. Whatever you can. Do you see a published version of this or multi-classing system somewhere where the Battlerager could turn into a super cool, interesting build? Let me know in the comments down below, because right now I don't see it. It just looks underpowered to me. Otherwise, again, that is all for me today, and I will see you guys in the next time. All right, bye bye.